This is Austin, state capital of Texas. It is a city brimming with culture. It has a fantastic music scene, and the food has to be experienced to be believed. What are we interested in? Well, of course, it is the Circuit of the Americas, an iconic track, relatively young, but one which provides such objectives for our Ferrari Challenge drivers, especially in 2024, as we take to the track with a brand new car, the Ferrari 296 Challenge, as we launch what will be an epic season of Ferrari Challenge racing. Hello everyone, a very good morning to you. Welcome to COTA, and as you can see, as you look at these lovely images now, the track looks absolutely dry and perfect. Trust me, just an hour ago, it looked nothing like this. We had rainfall like you would not believe, and the whole track was absolutely saturated. Combine that with some fairly heavy-duty wind that took to the track as well, and we lost a few of the things in the paddock, it has to be said, and the weather conditions were really not very nice at all, Tony Verlander. But now we're here, and you said to me off the air just a few moments ago, Dave, this track dries out so quickly. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, that is true. There is some elevation changes. As soon as the water, let's say the rain stops, I think the racing line clears out pretty quickly. Difficult to make the call when we are going towards the first qualifying. Who is the driver, first one to choose those slick tires, or is it more safety with the rain tires? So let's see how it forms the first qualifying of today.
5.5 kilometers this track, which means some parts, and as you can see here from that image, you can still see some standing water around. So our 2024 calendar is brilliant. We start here in the Circuit of the Americas, then we go to Laguna Seca, then it's in support of Formula One at Montreal, then Watkins Glen International ahead of Sonoma Raceway, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and of course into Europe for the Finale Mondiale at Imola in Tuscany, right in the middle of October. So that's the way it looks, and this is the Circuit of the Americas then, and Austin's an extraordinary place, I have to say, and this track is extraordinary and a difficult one for the drivers to get mastery of, it has to be said. Some 20 turns, as you can see, and well, quite some elevation changes as well, including to turn number one, 133 foot, that climb from the start-finish line into turn number one. That's a great shot of our paddock and how it looks here at the Circuit of the Americas. We're going to get qualifying underway for Copa Shell very, very shortly. A 20-minute short, sharp session for our Shell and Shell Am drivers to take to the track and post their best time possible to give them the best possible starting position when it comes to their race this afternoon. And there is the observation tower, which neither Ferrari ambassador and top driver Tony Verlander alongside me nor me wants to go up there. 24 degrees is the track temperature. The air temperature is positively freezing by comparison. 19 degrees comparison to yesterday. 96% humidity and a bit of wind around. It's calmed down quite significantly now. Oh, my goodness me. The weather, Shay Adam warned me about what it could be like here in Texas. Shay, you weren't wrong.
No, it does tend to rain heavily when it chooses to rain in Texas. They do everything bigger in this state. And that being said, sprinkles are starting to fall out of the sky again. So I will not be removing my nice new Ferrari rain jacket at all today. To answer the question about slicks versus wets, everyone in Copa Shell is still on wet weather tires. We did just have the Club Competizione cars out on track. They were about 20 seconds a lap slower from their best lap to where we had seen them earlier in the weekend in the full dry running. So I'm not expecting to see any sort of blistering times in this qualifying session, but it could mix things up, particularly if the race later is less wet than it is right now. I'm not going to say dry.
Well, yes, it is going to mix things up, makes things very, very interesting for us. And especially so for the drivers, because Tony Verlander, brand new car, 296, all the testing has been done and dusted, but I think the testing has been done pretty much in the dry, hasn't it?
Yeah, most of the drivers never driven this car under wet weather or with wet tires, so it's a new experience for them. Also, the fact that the whole weekend, the preparation is done for dry running. So all the work with the coaches, braking points, the right racing lines, the fine tuning has been done for the slick tires. So now this is a real test for the drivers to adapt these difficult conditions. We see also on track there is places where it's been resurfaced, so the grip level changes during the lap a lot. So not an easy task for these drivers to approach this 20-minute qualifying session.
And I assume, Tony, that it's not only the drivers, but of course all the data that the engineers have and the teams, all of that has been collated, if you like, for dry and from dry weather running. So it's as much a task for them and for the coaches and the teams and for the engineers, etc., as well as it is for the drivers.
So many variables. I mean, the basic laws running under wet condition is the right height, camber, the stiffness of the race car, pressure of the tires, everything combined. So now I think most of the teams are based on the experience on previous car model, normal stuff done to the race car that you would normally do in a wet weather conditions. So it will be a tricky qualifying, and if the rain doesn't arrive again, probably the last minutes of the session will be the fastest one. So the timing as well, be at the right place at the right time, and then be up on the grid for the race 2 this afternoon.
We're utterly thrilled that Tony Verlander is going to be with us for most of the season across here, the North America Ferrari Challenge season, as we look at the car of Mitchell Green then for Ferrari of Westlake, who finished P5 in the race yesterday. And you get the feeling, you get the impression watching these cars, they're being very tentative as they take to the track for the first time, of asking in this qualifying session. Now, throw into it the fact that the qualifying session is not a long one. It's 20 minutes. That's all the drivers have. And we have a mix of Shell and Shell Am drivers out there as well. This is Bruce Cleveland, the Ferrari of Silicon Valley driver. And I've spent quite some time with Bruce over the course of this weekend. He was just off the podium yesterday, finishing P4 in his first race. And well, we saw plenty of Bruce on the podium last year. But of course, a whole new set of questions for this year, because of course, brand new car that Bruce is driving, this wonderful Ferrari 296 Challenge car. You can see center dashboard there, big screen, and the big screen is there because of a safety bulkhead behind the driver, so there's no rear view mirror. And really interestingly, when you talk to the drivers about how different it is having a screen to a mirror, they all say that they prefer it because it's much, much more enveloping in terms of the information they can glean from that screen. Gives them a wider view, and is really a very, very positive development, which I believe was first introduced into the 488 Challenge car.
Yeah, this is modern technology. The rear view camera gives you a really nice perspective what happens behind the race car, and you can predict the overtaking maneuvers and also see the distance you have to the car behind. So I think the rear view camera is a very good element in safety and also for the racing and everything in general.
So our Shell drivers that you can see out on track, you can identify Shell and Shell Am drivers by the windscreen. As we look at Chuck Whittle, driver of car number 166. Now, Chuck Whittle was elevated into a podium position yesterday after the COTA Shell race yesterday. 1 or 2 penalties were applied after the race, and that saw Chuck Whittle taking a podium. So, Shell drivers have a yellow strip across the top of the windscreen. The Shell Am drivers have a black strip across the top of the windscreen. That makes it really, really easy to identify which category each of our drivers is racing within. So we are beginning to see a bit more speed now, and it won't be long before we see some meaningful times relative to what they're able to do on our timing screen. You can see here, just looking at this position on the track, where there is still, the weather conditions are still very, very damp. Now, making the most of this car and of the race yesterday was the Ferrari of Denver driver Cyril Choksi. Driver of car number 173. He took the win yesterday, but Cyril made it difficult for himself He didn't do that in qualifying. He qualified really well, qualified P1, but then made a mistake on the run up to turn number 1 where he hit the rev limiter. So presumably, Tony, that means he was in the wrong gear. And then he lost out on that P1 place initially. He did get it back later on in the race and went on to win it. But surreal, and I'm thrilled with the humbleness of the drivers. And Surreal put his hands up and said, "You know what? It was my mistake. You know, I hit the rev limiter, and that was it."
Yeah, first race of the season, new car, a lot of excitement. It goes always to the start of the race, and he had one gear too low. When he went to the throttle, there was response, but straight away to the rev limiter, and he couldn't make that ground. He couldn't move forward with his race car, and he lost 2 places. But he was, I think, really clever in the race. When we had the second situation that then in the end bought us the second safety car, he made that move into turn 11, and then he continued all the way down to turn 12, and that was the winning move for the race. So, in my opinion, with the team, he almost anticipated that safety car, that now it's time to make the move for the lead.
We're looking at Jan Bernier, and Jan Bernier then was the driver, actually, that one of the drivers that got past Cyril Choksi right at the start of the race. He's third fastest in our qualifying session at the moment in the familiar orange and blue colours that Jan Bernier prefers across his car. Now, unfortunately for Jan, he finished way down the order after an incident yesterday. He'll be hoping to right the wrongs of yesterday, and he is currently 4th fastest. The order is Cyril Choksi from John Viska. Then it is Chuck Whittle and Jan Bernier. Now, the first and best time thus far is a 2:23, which has come from Cyril Choksi. You can see it on the screen to your left-hand side. Now, John Viska, incidentally, is a full second and a third behind that time. So still plenty of times to come down, I suspect. As probably, Tony, is it fair to say, as we look at Lisa Clark, who, of course, was the Copa Shell AM champion last year, I should say. Very well-travelled driver is Lisa Clark, and a richly deserved championship title last year. Is it fair to say, Tony, that within each lap the track conditions may alter? And you were the one that said probably the best times will come towards the end of the session.
I think the biggest thing right now is the drivers taking confidence with their race car, with wet tires. The leading driver now, Cyril Choksi, you can see that with his driving, he's taking the car more towards the limit. Most of the drivers still building up the confidence. There's still 12 minutes to go.
Yeah.
So I think it's a work in progress. You need the confidence before you can go fast. If you try to be too hungry in the beginning, it bites you back. So I think the right approach is to make the progress step by step.
Tal El-Sher is the fastest of our Shell-Am drivers, and Tal El-Sher, what a debut into the Ferrari Challenge yesterday. Had a very good time of it because he won the race for Ferrari of Central New Jersey, and he is currently fastest in our Copa Shell AM qualifying. Jerry Walters second fastest, and Waltersdorf is third fastest. Make Jerry Walters and Jeffrey Nunberg P1 and P2 now in Copa Shell AM. As you can see, the screen on the left-hand side is constantly changing. The data that you can see there, you have as much information as we do so that you can see at a heartbeat who is doing what. So Jerry Walters, who I spoke to at breakfast this morning, was bitterly disappointed yesterday, of course, because was running a fantastic race, Tony, and very unfortunate instance. Saw Jerry turned around. She was able to recover the car and get going again, but that did for her race. And again, she's another driver that will be wanting to right the wrongs of yesterday, and thus far, with a qualifying performance, a very creditable effort at that right now, as she loses her P1 place in Shell-Am to Roy Carroll, who has gone fastest in Shell-Am. This then is the Continental Autosports driver Brian Waltersdorf, and Brian finished P8 within class yesterday, and John Viska now goes quickest overall and has usurped Cyril Choksi for the top step, and has done it by quite a margin. It's 8, very nearly 9 tenths. So proving Tony's point that the track is going to come to these drivers towards the end of the session. We've got about 50% of the session done and dusted now as we watch Brian Waltersdorf then as he continues on his way around this 3.5 mile circuit through the S's here, where it amazes me and just how much of the curves they take. Now, Of course, the curbs will be a different prospect today to what they were yesterday because they do tend to hold a bit of water, Tony.
Yeah, you need to be careful. The grip changes over the curbs, changes with the different tarmac. There is a new tarmac that sometimes it becomes very slippery when the rain comes down. Going back to the performances, there's also a case sometimes that with the brand new tires, when the track doesn't have much water, the first few laps are the ones that the tire is giving the most grip-wise, and then after that you start sliding more and you lose performance. So it's down to the driver to communicate with the team, give the feedback. Do I need a cool down lap? Is it something we can do to improve the grip or the performance? So in these conditions, when we actually don't have a continuous rain, it's not that easy.
And generally speaking, Tony, I have always advocated that if you're running wet weather tyres, for the tyres to perform at their best, they need to be kept wet. So you might see where drivers are searching out some of the damp parts of the circuit just to keep those tyres within their operational window.
Yeah, that is true. When you start overheating those tyres, the block of the tire starts moving more and you don't have the lateral grip, the efficiency anymore. So it's a very tricky point. In Formula One, we talk about taking tires to the right temperature,
yes,
like working window. Same thing here. Those 4 tires touching the ground is one of the most important parts of the racetrack, the race car to go fast.
Steve Jack is now quickest driver for the Shell Am drivers. And driving the 112 car is Mike Luley, one of the longest-serving campaigners in the Ferrari Challenge. Great to see Mike with us once again. He took a P6 yesterday. So it's John Viscup that is leading this qualifying session overall, and he's the leading Shell driver. And it's Steve Check who is leading in Shell Am, ahead of Brian Walterstorff and Roy Carroll. So John Viscup, Cyril Choksi and Robert McWilliams, the top 3. For Shell drivers, for Shell Am, it's Check, Walterstorff and Carroll, with yesterday's victor Tal Al-Sher running in P4 within class at the moment. Here is Roy Carroll then, the Foreign Cars Italia driver, the wonderful mix of yellow and purple across his car that makes it really, really easy to identify, and good to see as we look at Ray Acosta. In fairness, that car is the 101 car that we are seeing right now of Roger Monteforte. We're having to get used to new colour schemes for these drivers as they celebrate the arrival of this wonderful Ferrari 296 with different liveries across their cars. John Viscup, Cyril Choksi, Robert McWilliams, the top 3, with Steve Check, Roy Carroll and Tal El-Sher, the top 3 in Shell Am. Here is Eric Marsden. Eric yesterday finished on track in a podium place, and then a penalty was applied, so that put Eric down the order, and he actually picked up a penalty, time penalty, which was added to his race time, and that meant that he finished P8. So again, Eric will be hoping to right the wrongs of yesterday in the race today. He has to say, I have spoken to him extensively, and absolutely loves the car, Tony, and I think that's the impression of most of our drivers, isn't it, of this wonderful new Ferrari 296 Challenge car, that the drivers are embracing it.
Yeah, that is true. Last night we had a celebration of Ferrari where we celebrated all the victories recently on the 24-hour races. So the victory at Nürburgring, at Daytona with the 296 GT3, but also the victory at Le Mans with the prototype 499P. And most of the drivers joined us in this beautiful party, and I had a chance to talk again with the drivers after the first racing day, and the comments were the same. The car is amazing. They really enjoy it under braking. Even in the racing conditions, they said it still has the speed, it has the consistency, and it has those details, improvements compared to 488 that all the drivers were looking for, and we had a happy day 1 of racing yesterday.
Steve Check is fastest for COTA Shell Am. Dana Goodwin now is P2, and then it is Brian Walterstorff P3 for Shell Am. For the Shell drivers, John Viscup, Robert McWilliams and Cyril Choksi P3 currently. We keep our eyes because we've got 5.5 minutes, as near as makes no difference, remaining in this qualifying session. And from that shot, you can see that various parts of the track are certainly dry, but when you see other parts of the track, not necessarily so. And when you bring into that combination the fact that various parts of the circuit have been resurfaced as well, which affords a different grip level, quite a lot for the drivers to have to consider and think about as we look at Roger Monteforte. Then where is Roger in the Where is he in the times at the moment? Well, a meaningful time has not yet been put there by Roger Monteforte, which is why we're running the clock on him right now. Let's see what the Ferrari of Central New Jersey driver can do. And will he be able to trouble the top runners in Shell-Am? We will see. Heading towards breaking the timing beam now. And Roger Monteforte then goes second fastest. So chose to leave it until later on in the session before coming out, which is always a roll of the dice that can sometimes work and sometimes not work. On this occasion, I would suggest for Roger Monteforte, he's done a very good job there.
Yeah, it is true. These conditions are a little bit a mix of a gamble and also experience. If I would need to say something about the racetrack, the main straight dry, turn 1 dry, down the hill towards the turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is a forming sort of a drier racing line. The last sector with the slow corners and the carousel is still pretty wet. There is some water coming out from the tires, so it's very difficult and maybe a bit too early to make the call for the slicks, even considering the coming qualifying session. So tricky conditions to make the right call, and also with the right strategy you can really nail the qualifying and have a good starting place for the race.
John Viscup had been at the top of the table for quite some laps, but now Cyril Choksi has found 4 1/4 tenths and goes back to P1 in our qualifying session for the Shell drivers, ahead of John Viscup and Robert McWilliams. For our Shell-Am drivers, it is Steve Czech, Roger Monteforte. Make that Roy Carroll, Steve Czech, Roger Monteforte, as Roy Carroll puts in a blistering time and goes fastest for our Shell-Am drivers. So in the final stages of this qualifying session for our COTA Shell drivers here in the Ferrari Challenge North America, the times are coming down, and each lap seemingly showing some improvement in terms of times that the drivers are able to put onto the chart that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. So under braking there, and perhaps carrying a bit too much speed into that, was David Williams. Finished the race P10 yesterday. So we continue to check out these wonderful 296s as they really pummel their way through the S's. It's a joy to behold, it has to be said. And the 111 car of Brian Watersdorf, who was up there in the early knockings of the top drivers in Shell-Am, as we see one, if proof were needed that just how tricky those conditions are, Robert McWilliams, in perhaps one of the liveliest liveries on the car, finds that you can soon just put it over that knife edge, and that was coming out of that turn, Tony.
Yeah, that place is not easy. Even on slicks, you need to be careful. You're carrying a lot of speed, and there's just a little too much rotation from the race car and difficult to control. And what often happens is the car spins towards the inside of the corner and a little touch on the barriers.
So you're absolutely at the limit, as indeed is Cyril Choksi, trying to improve. Jan Bernier, we could see him with, and Jan Bernier is currently 4th fastest. Now here comes Jerry Walters. Jerry Walters has dropped down the order in comparison to her early form in this qualifying session, and we've only got a minute and a half left. So Jerry Walters is down there P17, make that P18 overall, and it's P7 in class. Now there is the 141 car of Jeffrey Nunberg, who was elevated into a podium position yesterday and took P3, his last lap at 2:37.29. And Jeff is another driver hoping to find an improvement trajectory in the final minute or so of this qualifying session, but he's got a bit of traffic ahead of him, which might hamper his efforts. So it's Cyril Choksi, John Viscup, Robert McWilliams, who we saw skating into the guardrail just a few moments ago, and it's Roy Carroll, Steve Czech, and Talal Sher for the Shell-Am drivers. It's actually changed that now because Brian Watersdorf has just gone quickest for Shell-Am, so he is P1 ahead of Roy Carroll and Steve Czech. 36 seconds remaining in this qualifying session. Now, of course, if you cross the timing line before the clock has counted down to 0, that means that that lap that you have started will still count. If you're on a hot lap, you can stay on a hot lap. as we look at the car of John Viscup, who is the Boardwalk Ferrari driver, second fastest at the moment. He's trying to find an improvement, but he has got a couple of drivers ahead of him, and those drivers are Shell Am drivers. So John Viscup has got traffic to contend with, as well as trying to find the optimum line around this wet but drying track in places, and to try and improve his P2 position and take that pole position away from Cyril Choksi, who holds that provisionally. And Brian Waltersdorf has done that for Shell Am ahead of Roger Monteforte and Roy Carroll. And there you can see just how difficult it is sometimes with traffic out there, and John Viscup having to make his way around the Jeffrey Nunberg car. And every driver, generally speaking, in the Ferrari Challenge, very mindful of other drivers that might be on a hot lap. But in fairness, the line is always going to be compromised, Tony, because you can't make your car disappear out of the way.
Yeah, and even more with these conditions, you cannot really trust your skills too much, because if there's car outside, you do a slight mistake, it can end up bad. So with these conditions, you need to be even more careful with the traffic. And yeah, generally in challenge, you see a good respect between the drivers. Few touches, few contacts yesterday, but overall a good day. Even this qualifying session that started out day was good. Only one mistake so far from the drivers, and a right approach in these difficult conditions.
Cyril Choksi, John Viscup and Robert McWilliams then the top three for our Shell drivers. For our Shell Am drivers, Roy Carroll, right in the final stages of this qualifying, has gone P1 in class, and relegated to Brian Waltersdorf and Roger Monteforte to P2 and P3 at the moment. I could see that coming from Roy Carroll. He'd done a very, very good job of anticipating the cars out there on track and where they were, buying himself a bit of track space, and then delivering what was his perfect lap to give him a provisional pole right at the end of the session. So really, really quite clever work there, using the session well, Tony, and deciding to run right at the end of the session to put in the hottest lap.
Yeah, exactly. Both pole sitters were on it until the last laps. Even Choksi, who had got the overall pole, really improved his lap time and gapped the second place driver with 1.8 seconds. So the track condition towards the end of the session was the best, and few drivers with the clean space on track were able to improve, and also understanding where is the grip, how late I can brake, and where is the right racing line. So with these conditions, it's a continuous reading of the racetrack, and beautiful job done by Carroll in the pole position and Choksi in the overall list. So very good job.
I agree, and well done to all the drivers in very challenging conditions there, making the most of this circuit. And as you say, just one very, very innocuous off. That's all we had in that qualifying session. Let's bring you the results in full then. Here they are. Cyril Choksi takes pole position, his second of the weekend. John Viscup P2, Robert McWilliams P3, then it's Jan Bernier, Ray Acosta, Bruce Cleveland, Chuck Whittle and Osvaldo Gallo. Best of the Am drivers, Roy Carroll, P9 overall, but P1 in class. Then it was Eric Marston. He'll be starting from the fifth row of the pack. Brian Waltersdorf, Roger Monteforte. Then it was Mitchell Green, Steve Check, Talal Sher, Dana Goodwin, Jerry Walters, Mike Luley, and David Williams then, with Jeffrey Nunberg, Paul Lynn, Lisa Clark, and Al Heggie. We didn't see times from Helen Chu, Neil Langberg, and Darren Bernstein. So that is Copa Shell qualifying completed, with pole positions awarded then to our Shell and Shell Am driver respectively. We mix it up, of course, because yesterday, first day of running, it was the Trofeo Pirelli drivers that qualified first. Today it is the Shell drivers, and this is Cyril Choksi, who'll be making his way outside of the car right now. Good job done by Cyril, and he won't make the same mistake, I suspect, in the race as he did yesterday in terms of being in the wrong gear going up to the top of the hill. He gets congratulations from his team. He's a fantastic racing driver, Cyril Choksi, and congratulated by his son as well. And yeah, you win and you lose as a team, and the team members just as delighted when the driver is successful. And Cyril Choksi then, Well, can he make it the perfect weekend here at COTA? He's certainly going to have a darned good go at it. Make no mistake about that. He's another one of the drivers, in fact, like all of the drivers, absolutely loving this Ferrari 296. And I suspect, actually, for many of the drivers, the fact that the weather conditions were so different today actually throws another curveball to them in terms of learning yet more about these wonderful cars, because the first opportunity they've had to use them in conditions which are less than perfect, and I suspect the car is very forgiving. Cyril Choksi, done it again, P1, he's with Shea.
The first question to Cyril has to be, how much more difficult was it today to get pole than it was yesterday?
It was a lot more because the track was getting better. So we all knew we were going to run 20 minutes or until there was a red flag. And so you could never be content with a lap. And my last lap was my best lap. Caught some traffic. I'm sure others did as well. But let it rain, baby.
Are you happier if it rains later than if it stays dry?
I actually enjoy the rain. I don't know, it must be just me, but especially in this car with these tires, the grip is great and it feels great. It's fun to get loose a little bit, not too much, but yeah, really enjoyable.
How close was the track to that crossover point by the end of the session? Because we could see it drying out, but not quite enough.
Yeah, it's, you know, just when you feel that it's okay and you give it gas a little early, it's still a little bit getting loose. So I think maybe in a 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it'd be a slick track, but yeah, it was right at the edge.
Well, hey, trophy number 3 of the weekend so far, still one more to go.
All right, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Well done, Cyril Choksi, in receipt of yet another Rotiform pole position award. Interesting what you were saying there, Tony, that, you know, probably after this session, providing there is no more rain, the track becomes a slick one.
Yeah, it is a difficult call. For sure we are close to the slick tires, but you also need to bear in mind you have the race later on today and you need to have the car in one piece.
Yes.
If you take too much risk going with the slicks too early, it's just one mistake that can be really that decisive one. So I think for sure in this second qualifying of today, all the drivers will be on wet tires. Maybe adjusted tire pressures, maybe the areas where the track is a bit drier, so just to avoid that overheating and then to have a good performance for the whole 20 minutes. But in these conditions also, correct way what the pole sitter Cyril Choksi was saying, that in many occasions you stay on track the whole session. So you have the fuel, the driver ready for 20 minutes, but also the tires. You prepare the strategy together with your team and your engineer, how to approach this qualifying, try to get a clean lap towards the end, and that's what paid off to the pole sitter Choksi in the first session.
Thank you, Tony. We were looking at the number 46 car of Martin Burrows, who had a torrid time of it in the race yesterday. See what he can do in qualifying today as we look at Roberto Perina, who had a good time of it yesterday, taking P2 in the race in the number 55 car. And you can see him exiting the final turn now, and this session is underway. So we bring you non-stop action in our Ferrari Challenge weekends. We're barely a second between one session before the next session starts. We like to keep you entertained, you know. And the number 55 car of Roberto Perina then just checking out exactly where the grip is on this track. Let's ride on board with John Bennett, the Foreign Cars Italia driver, who gives us a driver's eye perspective now. And you can see as he makes his way through the corners.
Yeah, we are in the last sector, so turns 13, 14, 15, the slow speed corners, and then we go through the carousel where you fight with the steering wheel a bit. There is not a lot of water on this part of the track. You need to find the best grip, and with this qualifying session you can see that drivers are really looking for that limit of the tires and the grip straight away from the green flag.
The Foreign Cars Italia driver John Bennett finishing P8 in class yesterday. We're hoping to improve on that, and the first steps of doing that, of course, are posting a really good time in qualifying. So climbing up the hill as we look at the number 22 car of Christian Podolicchio, and for Ferrari of Central Florida. And Christian, of course, with that surname, Enzo Podolicchio, very well-known driver, as well as Christian now making his mark as well with a P5 yesterday. in our Pirelli race, and let's see what he can do in his qualifying session. As soon as we have some times for you, we will post those on the left-hand side of the screen so you can see how the drivers are making progress. And already the first 5 minutes of this qualifying session are done. I mean, a 20-minute qualifying, Tony. It's short, it's sharp, and you really have got to be on it, haven't you?
Yeah, that is true. You need to be awake early in the morning. Okay, we are close to the noon, but you need to be awake from the first laps. I don't know how to take this situation. I used to race with Potolicchio Senior, Perez Compact Senior. So where does that put me in this situation? So either these juniors, they must be 10 years old or something. I'm losing here. So my calculation must be wrong.
We were looking at the family combo of Dave Musial 2.0 and Dave Musial. There is the senior of the two, number 30, Dave Musial, who is the fastest of our Pirelli AM drivers, and Dave Musial Jr. is currently third fastest in Trofeo Pirelli at the moment. Make that fourth fastest now because Jason McCarthy has just gone better. The number 29 car is driven by Sebastian Mascaro, who was on the podium yesterday, taking a very, very good P3. Now, just to make it easy for you to identify, our Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers have the white strip across the top of the windscreen that you can see on both of these cars here, including the number 50 car of Compang, and the Pirelli drivers have the red strip across the top of the windscreen. So the order, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, as John Horsch goes best with the Pirelli AM drivers, followed by Matthias Compang, who is now second fastest. So John Horsch is a really easy car to identify. It's absolutely, totally black out there, the number 67 car. Here's another one with a creative bent towards the livery, and that is the car of Brian Kaminsky, who finished just off the podium P4 yesterday. And Brian Kaminsky then about to give us his first lap time and see what he can do in our qualifying session. Here comes Brian now, about to break the timing beam, and actually for the first time of asking goes third fastest within class, so very good job done there. Dylan Medler. Dylan Medler had a great time of it yesterday because he finished right on the top step of the podium, and he is third fastest in qualifying. So if everything were to stop right now, Dylan would be on the second row of the pack. But do bear in mind that we saw with these drivers that the track really comes to them towards the end of the session.
I think the last 10 minutes will be really wild when you see timing and scoring. Each driver, when they are crossing that timing line, you will see the classification changing all the time. So again, I believe that towards the last minutes, the last lap of this session will be the ones that decide really who is going to be on top. While when the drivers get the car in temperature, know where the grip is at, and they start going more towards the limit of the tire, so that will be the key.
I mentioned that the John Horsch car is very easy to identify because it is all black. It looks a mean machine, and John is pedaling it pretty well around this COTA circuit, having gone P1 in Pirelli AM, and he makes his way up the hill now. Car looks a bit sideways under braking as he scrubbed the speed going into turn number 1. The number 70 car of Jay Logan, the Boardwalk Ferrari driver, who's running then in Trofeo Pirelli AM, and about to break the timing beam and see what Jay Logan can do in terms of elevating. Well, he does move up a couple of positions. It's P6 or 7, I think, now for Jay Logan within class. Now there is Tony Davis. Tony was a very, very formidable racing driver last season, and that talent hasn't gone away. And he, another one of the drivers that's absolutely relishing being in this 296 car, and he improves 3 places almost immediately. So just laying store to what everyone has been saying, that the best times are going to come towards the end of the session. Dylan Medler then, currently third fastest. Knowing Dylan as I do, he's not going to be happy with that, the collection driver. He'll be hoping to usurp both Christian Potolicchio and Roberto Perena and go to the top of the chart. Let's see if he can do it with this time. Target time is 2:19.919. So Dylan Medler is heading towards the beam now, and he's certainly not going to trouble the top two with this particular lap. The number 22 car that we've been following of Christian Podolicchio, currently second fastest. Again, his target is a 2:19.9, and it's not going to be this one because it's a 2:21.1. That lap, he stays P2. Roberto Perina, P1. Brian Kaminsky, the best of the AM drivers. The number 30 car, driven to aplomb by Dave Musial, the Ferrari of Lake Forest driver, who currently is seventh in Trofeo Pirelli AM, as you can see from the bar across the bottom of your screen. And Dave having a good time of it yesterday, finishing P2 in the race. The number 46 car in a completely different livery this year for Martin Burrows, the Ferrari of Quebec driver. Currently 8th fastest, and comes into the pit lane, and I assume is just going to adjust the tyre pressures, perhaps then go again, because there's enough time to be able to do that.
Yeah, maybe something for Cher to check what's happening on the pit lane. Is it just tyre pressures or something else? What is going on? Also, the leading driver right now, Perina, really strong performance, over 2 seconds in front of Podolicchio, so he really found something special on that lap.
That tyre pressures or something else that you're talking about. The something else you're talking about here. Surely, Tony, we're not going to see anyone really roll the dice, are we, and try and put those slick tyres on?
Yeah, it's a close call. Like we said earlier, the main straight coming into turn one, this looks completely dry. You can see often in the braking that even from the rain tires, there's a little bit of smoke when the tires hit those ABS brakes. But then going down the hill, there's a little bit of humidity coming up from the tires, but the racing line is becoming drier and drier. So who is the first driver to risk?
Whilst I'm trying to add more narrative to our story, I've had confirmation from Shay in my ears that it's tyre pressures only.
All right, all right.
I was trying to build a story, you know what I'm saying. Brian Kaminsky then, P1 for Trofeo Pirelli AM. And crosses the timing line right now with a 2:32.22. So Brian Kaminsky doing a good job ahead of Brian Cook, who of course was victorious yesterday. He's second fastest, and John Horsch third fastest in our Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers. Roberto Perina is still having a very good go at it here. And Martin Burrows is returned, having had adjustments made to tyre pressures. Roberto Perina, Christian Podolicchio, then they are the top two in Trofeo Pirelli. In Trofeo Pirelli AM, it's Brian Kaminsky and Brian Cook, with John Horsch running P3, and Dave Musial Jr., incidentally. He is running P4 in Trofeo Pirelli, with Dylan Medler third fastest. Here is Jason McCarthy. Now, Jason's a really busy driver across this weekend, Tony, because not only is he racing in this wonderful new 296 car, but he's also out in the earlier protagonist of the Ferrari Challenge, the 488 Challenge Evo, which is a completely different car to drive. So he's making it a very, very busy weekend for himself.
Yeah, that is a decision that I truly respect. It means that you have a double duty, different cars, different approach, different lap times, even differently handling race cars. So you really need to adapt yourself continuously between the 488 Challenge Evo and 296.
And the thing is, for this, now we've switched them round so that we do Trofeo Pirelli as the second qualifying session. This means that he's literally going to have to jump out of that 296 and get into the 488 Challenge Evo. So a big task.
Yeah, that is true. So busy start for the day straight away, and also when we go towards the races, he will have 2 races in the row. So that's quite interesting.
Right, Joe Rubo for Ferrari of Long Island is currently 7th fastest. Make that 6th fastest now as he improves 1 place. We've got 6.5 minutes of our qualifying session remaining. The number 5 car is driven by Michael Mathis, who finished P13 yesterday. Is qualifying really, really well. He's P6 in Trofeo Pirelli AM currently, and improves 3 places. Goes to P3 for Michael Mathis. Very good job done indeed. Just really proving the point that the track is getting better and better and better. So the top timer, 2:17.780, and that is quite some margin over Christian Podolicchio, who is in the pit lane. And here is the number 3 car of Brian Cook. He was victorious yesterday, is currently 2nd fastest for Ferrari of Seattle. And he will be looking and targeting an improvement, of course, as all the drivers are targeting improvements with every single meter of the tarmac that they put under their 296 cars. And Brian Cook then currently second fastest with a time that's some 2.6 seconds down on Roberto Perina, the overall leader, but it's heading towards the timing line now for Brian Cook. And stays P2. So Kaminsky, Cook, and Mathis, the top three for Trofeo Pirelli AM. For Trofeo Pirelli, it's Perina, Podolicchio ahead of Dylan Medler, I should say, who is third fastest. And here is the Matthias Companc car out there, who at the moment is fifth fastest. And if any driver is going to improve, I would suggest that this may well be an improvement, perhaps.
Yeah, Matthias is an interesting young driver who for sure needs a little bit more experience, more time, race starts, the racecraft. He has the speed, and now it's just a matter of time when he gathers enough experience. And also, this qualifying session is important for his driving skills, the mental approach he needs to have. And in these classes, in these qualifying and races, you really need to go for it. So I think yesterday Matthias was a little bit too respectful for the opponents, and I think it's just a matter of time. Few race weekends, and he will really, we will see him fighting at the top, even higher than right now.
Joe Rubo has just gone second fastest for Trofeo Pirelli as we continue to watch the Companc car. Of course, the Companc name, Tony, well known in racing circles. And what's really, really nice is when you see young whippersnappers, if I can be so bold to say that, coming into the Ferrari Challenge, because they know that over the last few years it's been proven time and time again that the Ferrari Challenge can be a real springboard into a great motor racing career.
That is absolutely true. The best example is Niklas Nielsen, who came through karting, being really successful at young age, then went to Ferrari Challenge, won the World Finals, GT3, GTLM cars, also LMP2, and now he's one of our official drivers in the hypercar. So Niklas Nielsen is a great example. But also, what comes to our new race car, I think the gap between the new challenge car and the GT3 car is more narrow.
Right.
So it's easier for the young drivers to take this 296 challenge as a platform, as a preparation for the future, if the target is more towards GT3 racing, endurance racing, the big events that are around the world. So this platform, this race car is a good way to start and get experience.
Lots happening, as you can see. Brian Cook has gone fastest now for Trofeo Pirelli AM, ahead of Kaminsky and Michael Mathis, now P3. We ride on board here to really enjoy this, seesawing at the screen, at the steering wheel, looking at the screen, heading towards the timing line, loving these onboard shots that we're able to bring you as John Bennett crosses the timing line and goes for another very, very hot lap. Hard braking, Tony, going into that turn number one.
Yeah, we are riding on board. We started with the last turn completely dry, main straight completely dry. Approach here is similar, so the movement with the steering wheel comes from the tire choice. Wet tires are now a little bit on the limit. Racetrack to another around the world. When you are 10 seconds off the pace of a slick tire, that's most likely the crossover point. So I think we are really close to a slick tire condition right now.
We've got merely 1.5 minutes of this session remaining. We're riding on board here, loving this. You can see the dashboard on the left-hand side of the screen, down to third gear now. Accelerate hard. Right now, pedal to the metal. Up into fourth, fifth, lift, and then back on it again. Is he going to take sixth before the turn? Yes, he does, up to nearly 190. And then left, down to second gear, and now this straightaway. We're on board with the Foreign Cars Italia driver John Bennett, running the clock on him as well to see what he can do during this closing stages of this qualifying session and vault himself up further in the order. Give him a good position for the race to come. The
You can see on his dash when it goes purple, he's improving his own lap time and under braking to 11 and 12. He braked deeper, and now suddenly he's gaining a lot of time. These slow corners, like we mentioned earlier, very difficult to handle even these conditions. Understeer, oversteer. You want to put down the throttle, but you don't want to wheel spin too much. So he's still on purple.
He's still on purple. This is a brilliant lap to be able to bring you then live with John Bennett, the Foreign Cars Italia driver. Tony's absolutely right. It's staying purple. What can John Bennett do here? Surely it's going to be an improvement for him. Again, braking, just seesawing at the wheel, taking a little bit of the curb. And on the exit as well. One more turn to be done. Turns left, down to second gear. Nice and tight out of the exit. Didn't run too wide. And heads to the timing beam, a 2. Well, he stays where he was then, but that was really, really enjoyable to be there on that lap, Tony. It was almost like we were passengers.
Yeah, opening throttle really early to the corners, like the last turn, almost at the turning point. He already was on throttle, so you could see that the conditions and the track is pretty dry.
So, the session is done because the checkered flag is out. Anyone that is on a lap, the lap will still count, and Chris Cagnazzi then, the clock is still running on Chris Cagnazzi, has just been relegated, but then jumps again because his time was a good time. He goes to P4 for Chris Cagnazzi within the Trofeo Pirelli AM class, so still drivers on improving times then. And as Tony Villander mentioned, that we're really, really on the cusp now of, you could probably, if you were very, very cautious, get away with slick tyres. But there certainly wasn't enough time left in the session for those drivers to really try and take that gamble. The order is Roberto Perina, Joe Rubo, Martin Burrows. And then for our AM drivers, this is provisional. It's Horsch from Compact and Brian Cook. Here comes Dylan Medler, though, who is continuing and finds the checkered flag awaiting Dylan Medler. And the final cars then crossing the line now. You can see the checkers on the left-hand side of the graphics indicating those drivers that have completed their session. So provisionally it is Roberto Perina then on the P1 place for Trofeo Pirelli drivers, and John Horsch with a real improvement towards the end as he goes to P1 for Trofeo Pirelli AM. Here is Dave Musial. Dave Musial, another driver that's still got the time ticking down, and Jason McCarthy is another one of those. So Dave Musial and Jason McCarthy, both very, very quick drivers as they head to break the timing beam. And Jason McCarthy and Dave Musial now, their qualifying session is done and dusted. So confirmation of what we've got then for pole position for Trofeo Pirelli. It's going to be Roberto Perina, and it's going to be a pole position for John Horsch then for Trofeo Pirelli AM. So good qualifying session then, and getting quicker and quicker and quicker as every single meter of tarmac was navigated. There the number 12 car of Benoit Bergeron. We can see there the Ferrari 296 Challenge being brought into the pit lane. So all the drivers, I have to say, Tony, credit to all the drivers who have mastered the conditions, and no one mastering it better than Roberto Perina, the Ferrari of Seattle driver, finished P2 in the race yesterday. And it's going to be a P1 start for Roberto, so he's going to be very, very happy about that. Well, you could sense the happiness as he got out
great
of the car.
driving. He really adapted to these conditions, and a quite big margin, over 2 seconds to P2 driver Rubo. So impressive driving.
And right, let's bring you the confirmed results then from our Trofeo Pirelli qualifying. And Roberto Perina then P1, Joe Rubo P2, P3 overall, but P1 in class is John Horsch. Then it was Martin Burrows. He's going to be a danger man in the race. Brian Cook, yesterday's race victor, he goes from P2 in class, P5 overall. Then it was Matthias Kompang. And the order continues with Brad Kaminsky, Dylan Medler, Jay Logan, Jason McCarthy, Michael Mathis, Tony Davis, Brad Falver then. They're occupying the first 15 positions on the grid with Dave Musial Jr., Frank Chang, Benoit Bergeron, John Bennett, Brandon Cruz, David Musial and Sebastian Mascaro. And Ben Godenzi and Brett Curtis not posting a time. Bear in mind, when it comes to the race, that the drivers line up in their specific categories. And Roberto Perina then has done it. P1, he's with Shea.
Roberto, it was a good start to the season yesterday, satisfying podium, but now a pole position to go along with it. How much does that mean to you and to make it a double for your Ferrari of Seattle guys?
It means a ton because we get to start on the front, obviously, but it just validates that we have the car set up. The car acted exactly as I wanted it to act, and it proves that I can drive in the rain. So it means a lot, but it doesn't mean anything until we're done in a couple hours. So, but it means a ton. We love it. It's great. It's great for the team. Great for me.
I asked our Copa Shell pole sitter if he wanted it to rain or stay dry. Same question to you.
Oh, I want rain. Let's go. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on another cool trophy and another pole position. A first one of the year, but not your first ever.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Well done, Roberto. Rotiform pole position award then awarded, and he's delighted about that. Well done indeed. So there we have it. Our Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli Am qualifying session done and dusted. And right now we get straight into our 488 Challenge qualifying. So the protagonists of previous years then, this wonderful 488 Challenge Evo car, which continues to race in Ferrari Challenge in North America across 2024. And delighted to see that car, which has delivered so much success for so many drivers. We're thrilled that it's still going to be out there in anger. And there you can see the 111 car of Brad Evans, the Ferrari of San Antonio driver, who took it to P11 in class yesterday. So
I think I can spot slick tires.
I was, do you know what? You've taken the words out of my mouth, Tony. I could see you peering at the screen, and by dint of the fact we've had someone go around, that would suggest probably that you're right. But when are you never right, Tony?
I'm just guessing, but it really looked like slick tires, and I think that is the right call. But you need to be cautious. Build up those temperatures with patience. Don't go too fast, too early. You have 20 minutes, and you need to know how the track reacts. And now with the slick tires, the curb, inside, outside curbs, there might be water sitting over there, and then it catches you by surprise. So be careful, build up the confidence. That's a key for this session.
We have a car.
There was no patience.
It absolutely did not do what you suggested. And, well, Gray Falver, you will be receiving a written warning from Mr. T. Vilander. For not
Meet
listening.
you after the session.
Yeah, you need to, just take it easy initially. They're the number one car of Frank Szczesniak, who finished P6 in the race yesterday. Just take it easy, let it build and build and build, and then it will all come good for you towards the end of the session. So, these 488 Challenge Evo cars then, and I know I've been extolling the virtues of these cars because they've been such a wonderful, successful machine, and well, still to see them racing in the Ferrari Challenge is really joyous and richly deserved, and the drivers still getting an awful lot out of these cars, and they've got a big grid of them, some 26 here in COTA this weekend. So we mix up both the Pirelli and the Shell drivers in this one qualifying session. It will be a couple of laps before we see any meaningful times on the board, but they are going to be quick, because Tony's prediction that most of them will be running on the slick rubber means that their qualifying times are going to be very quick indeed relative to the other qualifying that we've seen, where of course the drivers in the cars have been out on wet weather tyres. So right, let's see how it develops then. Ready. We've had the first 3.5 minutes of this qualifying session is done, and it's that's
that was surfing through the SS.
The thing is, Tony, now with drivers that have been tempted to go onto the slick tyres, you kind of want to avoid running too much across the curves, because they're like buckets, aren't they, in terms of holding water?
Yeah, that is true. So you need to be really careful. spot those drying areas of the track, because even during a 15-20 minute session, those areas will become bigger. There's going to be more heat created from the race cars, and the track will dry on those places. Where there is standing water, never go there, because it will catch you. So it will be a building confidence session, and be alert, be ready to accept and understand the racetrack, and don't go too fast, too early, and that's the key.
Here's Gray Falva then, Ferrari of San Francisco then, who whilst driving has listened to Tony, and now all of a sudden seems to be into his comfort zone. He's certainly wrestling his way through the corners here. Oh, and just exactly what you were saying, Tony. You know, you have to be just so careful, and of course you've got other cars out there on track as well. Gray Falva really going for it in the early stages of this, and it, dare I say it, being a little bit too ambitious too early on can bite you on the bottom.
Yeah, it is true. So I think the car handling, the understanding of the track, understanding of the grip makes a difference in these conditions. But also going towards the last lap, you need to decide few things. You cannot stay in the same rhythm. You need to improve with the racetrack and improve grip. So that's why the performance comes, especially on a drying track, it comes on the last laps. Slick tires are warm, but also the drivers understand the track. If you stay flat in the same performance, it won't get you up on the grid.
And presumably you're using the first laps of the session almost as a reconnaissance, aren't you? Just sussing where the track is going to be forgiving for you and where it's a little bit treacherous.
Yeah, 100%. So you need to understand all the time. So it's like a work in progress the whole session. There's nothing that you are prepared for. Now the braking points, the turning points, everything is different. So everything learned with the coaches, everything that is being prepared towards the race weekend now is different. Now is more how to adapt in these changing conditions.
Well, we've photocopied the result from our previous qualifying and copied and pasted it because it's a Pirelli at the top of the chart at the moment, but it is the 488 challenge driver that is top of the chart at the moment, Massimo Pirelli, who Massimo of course had a fantastic time of it yesterday, taking the victory, and thus far he is P1 ahead of Omar Balkazun and Frank Szczesniak. Then it's Eric Hurd, Steve Chen and Roberto Pineda and Gary Ott. But now Gray Falva, despite the wrath of Tony Verlander, has gone to the top of the chart by being very bold and brave with a 2:25. So well done to Gray Falva, who's managed to keep it pointing in the right direction and has gone to the top of the chart. Here's Steve Blevett. Steve had some big moments in the race yesterday. Steve Blevett then, welcome to the Ferrari Challenge in the 172 car for the Ferrari of Rancho Mirage organization, being altogether a little bit more circumspect in terms of just where he's putting the car in the early stages of this qualifying, and perhaps wise. Gray Falva, Massimo Pirelli, Omar Balkazun, the top three for Pirelli drivers. For Shell drivers, it's Hurd, Chen and Pineda. As now under braking then going into turn number one. I mean, that is a real steep climb up the hill, but you still have to use the brakes as Jeffrey Keel goes through. And a driver that we were talking about who's got double duties across this weekend is Jason McCarthy, who is also racing in the 296, and Jason McCarthy is out there now qualifying in his previous race-winning car, of course, in the number 11 488 Challenge Evo. So Jason has literally stepped out of one car and stepped into another. And Jason McCarthy, we're expecting good things from his qualifying during the course of the just under 12 minutes that remain in this session. But Massimo Pirelli, the number 26 driver for Ferrari of Seattle, is relegated to P2 because, of course, Gray Falva went fastest, and Massimo responds by going quicker still, taking some 7.5 tenths out of the Gray Falva time, and Frank Szczesniak is third fastest at the moment. It's Chen who is quickest for our Shell drivers, ahead of Matthew Dalton and Gary Ott. Make that Chen, Hurd, Dalton now. as all the times are going to change very, very quickly, Tony.
Yeah, great car control again from Ferrari, who is fighting with the car through carousel. A little bit of oversteer all the time. Previous lap, he took the car to P1, and now the progression. Look at the lap times, the improvement, the crossover from wet tires to dry tires, and now you can really see the development of the racetrack, the temperature on tires and everything. So he still has four laps at least to go, and I am assume without any mistakes, he will improve every lap.
Okay, so it is going to be right at the end of the session where we see confirmation of who's going to be where then. Gray Falva now, I mean, that's a huge lump of time. When you look at the Massimo Perina time, and in comparison to that of Gray Falva, you're absolutely right. Not only are the times going to improve, but they're going to improve by some significant margin.
Yeah, and also the drivers who are able to take the car a little bit to the limit, fight the steering wheel, you create more temperature. So then it helps you to improve the lap time and everything. On dry and on wet, it's based on confidence. If you don't have the grip, you cannot make miracles. You have the grip on the tires, then the driver needs to be ready and use the quick grip that is available. So right now the leading driver is really showing what can be done in these conditions.
Here is Matt Dalton then, P3 currently within class for the Shell drivers in the 133 car, Gray Falva, Perina and then Szczesniak. They are the top three for our Pirelli drivers. For our Shell drivers, it's Chen ahead of Hurd and Dalton currently. Jason McCarthy has now gone third fastest for our Pirelli drivers. Here's Massimo Perina then trying to respond to the time set by Gray Falva. How is this going to go? Target time of 2:28.49. Well, Massimo Perina then gives us a time that is in the 2:19s, so 2:19.399. 2:19.399 for Massimo Perina, playing and really playing into the hands of the advice that Tony alongside me has given us, that each and every lap we are potentially going to see improvements in time. So our first sub 2:20 time comes from Massimo Perina at 2:19.399. Gray Falva then, he responds, but he's 4/10ths down on Massimo Perina, so it wasn't quite quick enough by 4/10ths, or just under 5/10ths to be honest with you. But we've still got 8.5 minutes of this session remaining. Of course, it's a long lap here, Tony, isn't it? So you need to make every lap count.
And also the traffic. You have a clean lap. I think Fowler had some traffic on the last lap because we could see him going over the timing line, and then once he was going on this last lap, there was some cars ahead of him. So if you need to stay a few corners behind, you lose a lot of time.
Can I just big up Henry Hummel then, new to the Ferrari Challenge, has just gone fastest in the Shell drivers for Ferrari of Lake Forest as we hear a car go around. Good avoidance by following driver. That's John Galasa who has gone around, but quickly gets it pointing in the right direction again. But yes, Henry Hummel then in the 129 car goes fastest for our Shell drivers ahead of Joel Rosenbacher and Pineda. Here comes Mark Musso. Now, Mark Musso, who was on the podium yesterday taking P3. He's currently 6th fastest in Trofeo Pirelli. Not sure this is going to be so much of an improvement for Mark. Well, it's 5th fastest. He's got traffic or had traffic, and now he can go for another lap. So we'll hope to see improvements from Mark Musso. So it's Perina, Falva, Jason McCarthy.
Yeah, also Perina has now traffic. He had to overtake the car to the second last corner.
And then for our Shell drivers, it's Hummel, Rosenbacher and Pineda. They are the top three, but it's changing, and keep your eyes on the chart on the left-hand side of your screen, and that's where you'll see those that are improving all of the time. So fastest time at 2:18 from Massimo Perina at 2:18.965. Here's the number 33 car of Omar Balkasoon. And the Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale driver is currently P7 in class, so Omar Balkasoon will be hoping for an improvement as well. I think Omar got caught up with quite some traffic too, so Omar Balkasoon then, but he does improve and goes to 5th fastest within class, and Eric Pan has gone 4th fastest in Trofeo Pirelli. Frank Szczesniak relegated to sixth fastest within the group. So lots going on and lots changing all the time as Henry Hummel's place at the top of the chart has just been usurped by Gary Ott and Steve Chen. Here is the Ferrari of Lake Forest driver Henry Hummel then, heading towards the timing line now. Currently fifth fastest within the Shell class at 2:28.498 his last lap time. So Perina, Falva, McCarthy, and then it's Ott, Chen and Pineda, the top three for our Shell drivers now. Our Trofeo Pirelli drivers in 488 have the red screen, a red strip across the top of the screen. Our AM drivers, our COTA Shell drivers have the yellow strip across the top of the windscreen, and Joel Rosenbacher goes fastest for our Shell drivers. So Joel Rosenbacher ahead of Ott and Chen. Here comes Venceslovas then crosses the timing line, and it's eighth fastest. Now we pick up on the number 76 car of Logan Broughton for Ferrari of Lake Forest. What can Logan Broughton do? So Jason McCarthy looks like he could be on an improvement trajectory as well as we run the graphics at the bottom of the screen. What do we got? Just under 5 minutes remaining. There's Jason McCarthy rounding the final turn. His target is a 2:18.965. Jason McCarthy didn't quite get there, but he did improve a bit. Jason McCarthy now, or was, P3, but Mark Musso actually had a good lap underneath him as well, so he goes third fastest. So with 4.5 minutes remaining, still expect to see plenty of changes as Magnuszewski in the 183 car of Ferrari of Fort Lauderdale in these 488 Challenge Evos.
Yeah, with these relatively big gaps, it shows that drivers had quite a lot of margin to improve. So
yes,
those last 2-3 laps, they are really important, and nothing is done still with the timing and scoring and classification. So drivers need to be on it. Also clean laps, the last 2 laps, you need to be clean with the traffic and try to be as fast as possible.
Gray Falva is going to try and improve. He wants that Rotiform pole position award, that's for sure. And to do that, he's got to get a time in that's quicker than Massimo Perina, and he needs to find 6.5 tenths of improvement as Pineda now goes quickest for our Shell drivers ahead of Rosenbacher and Gary Ott. Here is the 129 car of Henry Hummel, who just for a couple of laps or so was right at the top of the COTA Shell qualifiers. Nice clean exit out of the final turn. He's currently 6th fastest. He improves a further place. It's now 5th fastest within class. Very good showing from Henry. Well done. And the 159 car of Gredas Venceslovas then finished on the podium yesterday. P3 in class. He's currently, dare I say, languishing down there, P8 in class. So we're expecting some improvements to come from the 3 minutes or so that we have remaining in this 488 Challenge qualifying session. We're live from the Circuit of the Americas with Tony Verlander alongside me, just keeping an eye on every driver and looking at the data, and he's actually writing up his report card for a little bit later on. And Massimo Perina, Gray Falva and Mark Musso, the top 3, as Frank Szczesniak had improved, but Mark Musso improving at the same time has pushed Frank Szczesniak down to P4. Logan Broughton now goes P4, so splits and Musso as Jason McCarthy gives us a 2:17.608. Tony, I'm going to listen to you more because we are seeing...
I'm not always right.
We are seeing huge advantages. Huge gaps come down now as Massimo Perina responds to Jason McCarthy by taking 3.5 seconds out of his previous time.
Yeah, clean lap, confidence with the racetrack, more drying line, and these drivers are struggling to get the free space. Then after qualifying with the coach and the team, but I should have done more. I had more pace in the car, but this is not the optimum to launch yourself for the last lap, 3-4 cars together like this.
For Gray Falva, who now, despite the traffic, goes 2nd fastest. Massimo Perina, 2:14.037 is the fastest. Here comes Eric Pan. This is not going to trouble the front runners, but it might be an improvement personally, but it isn't. So, with 1.5 minutes remaining, you've got 1.5 minutes to cross that line, find yourself some space to put in another lap. theoretically, for some drivers that are just starting a lap, this is going to be their last opportunity at improvement.
Yeah, this is the key moment of the session. You've been preparing everything for this, and now is the moment to decide. I need to brake later. I need to carry more speed into the corners. The S's, I can do 10Ks. I can do 3-4 miles faster. So this is the moment to improve the lap time. But don't hit the barriers.
Don't hit the barriers. No, we don't want that to happen. Right. Evans then for Ferrari of San Antonio, currently 10th fastest. He's going to cross the timing line and be able to put another lap in because there's 45 seconds left on the clock. So Perina from Falva from McCarthy for our Pirelli drivers, for our Ram drivers, so our Shell drivers, I should say. It's Rosenbacher, Dalton, and Pineda. Here's Logan Broughton and also Jason McCarthy. Now, bear in mind, Jason McCarthy was at the top of the chart just a couple of moments ago. Jason is going to be really, really close as to whether he can do another lap. He's going to cross the line with just a couple of seconds on the clock, so he's going to be able to go again. And right, here comes Jason McCarthy. He locks up a little bit going into turn number 1.
Yeah, the image just got, the video just got at the overtaking moment, but going offline with the drying track is not optimum, so I hope it all went well.
Did he get a little bit of a toe off of the Jay Logan car going up the hill, Tony?
Yeah, he got the toe, but also with the overtaking, and it's not the same grip inside at this moment. So I think the checkered flag is out right now.
It is. Anyone that is on a lap and can improve, the lap will count. This is going to be the last opportunity for Gray Falva as he heads and passes the checkered flag, and he stays P2. That lap was not the one for him. We saw him in traffic, Tony, and you know, you can't make cars disappear. So Gray Falva was not able to improve. Now, Jason McCarthy, we know, did cross with time in hand. He didn't get through turn number 1 perhaps quite as well as he would have liked to have done. So it's Gary Ott for our Shell drivers. Currently, it's Massimo Perina for our Pirelli drivers. But still scores to be settled potentially before the end of this session. So we watch the Foreign Cars Italia driver of Gregory Hopkins head towards the beam. Can he improve on his P9 place? For Gregory Hopkins, then a 2:23.520. The 126 car that we can see here is driven by Joel Rosenbacher, who... Can he improve? Because Joel Rosenbacher was at the top of the chart for some time in the session, but does not improve. Now, this is the one that could be crucial and critical here. Jason McCarthy. He appears to have space ahead of him. The target time is a 2:12.171. So as he heads now towards the lighting gantry, it's going to be really on it here. And Jason McCarthy with a 2:14.084, a sterling effort by Jason to try and get on terms with Massimo Perina, but it wasn't to be. But we know that Logan Broughton has finished now, so that's it. That was a very, very exciting session, Tony Verlander, and everything you told us at the start of the session was absolutely right. I didn't get you to do my...
It was an interesting session, and apart from the few spinning drivers in the beginning while warming up the tires, everything did a super job, and they were really understanding the racetrack, and great fight for the pole positions until the checkered flag. So great 20-minute qualifying session.
Yes, it was that. And there is some delight. Daniel Mancinelli, another young driver that has had a phenomenal racing career as a result of racing in the Ferrari Challenge, now acts as a driver coach to various drivers, including Massimo Perina, then the Ferrari of Seattle driver, who is P1 ahead of Jason McCarthy and Gray Falva. Then it was Mark Musso, Eric Pan, Logan Broughton, and Frank Szczesniak. Best of the Shell drivers, Gary Ott. He was ahead of Omar Balkasun and Gerdas Venslovas. Sorry, Gerdas, we didn't big up your P2 enough, really. But there was so much going on with Joel Rosenbacher, Richard Pineda, Matthew Dalton, Enoch Hurd. Then it was Gregory Hopkins, Stephen Chen, Brad Evans, Henry Hummel, Dan Magnuszewski, occupying the positions down to 19th, with Anthony DiCarlo, Jeffrey Keel, Steve Blevett, Louis Periscua, John Galazza, Bernard Gomez and John McKenna not setting a time. So 25 drivers out there giving it their all, and none more so than Massimo Perina.
Or was it to get that pole position today?
Significantly. The track was consistently drying, and the amount of traffic as well made it a lot more difficult. But as the time went on, I found myself with a gap and a drier track, which made it a lot easier.
How difficult was it to temper yourself as well, to hold back, knowing the track was going to get better and better?
It took a lot of restraint because every part of me wanted to push, but the car wouldn't allow. But eventually it did, and we got down to what is pretty close to our dry times.
Congratulations on yet another pole position and a perfect race season so far.
Thank you very much.
Well done, Massimo. Rotiform Pole Position Award is elegantly presented to him. Well done on your pole position. Thank you so much for watching qualifying. Make sure you join us a little bit later this afternoon for all the races to come. From Tony and myself, thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now.